If I could ask the folks in the back to find a seat for me, we're going to go ahead and get started. All right. Thank you for joining us in person this evening, for those of you that are here at Millsboro Middle School. And I also want to welcome those that are joining us online. We're streaming online. I will say that we have a presentation to go through, and we will provide opportunities both virtually online and here in our auditorium after the presentation for any comments or questions you may have. We certainly don't want you to leave uninformed about anything related to our referendum. So first things first, I'm Jay Owens, proud superintendent here at Indian River School District. This is my 25th year and 5 years in this position, and I'm happy to be here with you this evening. I also want to introduce our Director of Finance, Mrs. Tammy Smith. She'll be facilitating the conversation with us this evening. So June 5th, that is our referendum date. And one of the big questions we got right after the board determined that they wanted to go back out for a second referendum on June 5th was, why so soon? Why not wait to next year? We still have this reassessment occurring, and that was weighed very heavily with our members of the board, as it should have been. Where they landed was the fact that a couple things. First was we cannot access the revenue through a passage of a referendum next year if we get past that June 30th date. So anything beyond June 30th, we can't access that revenue for an increased tax base until the following year. So the June 5th was purposeful so we can hopefully access the revenue that's needed here for our district into next year. The second piece to that was, it's just needed. That's the momentum that we gained over that previous referendum process. We wanted to capitalize off of that. We know we had a lot of folks that voted yes for the referendum and many that voted no. And we felt that we were able to get the word out, but there's a large portion that we were not able to be in front of and inform. So we wanted to capitalize on that momentum. So I'll move into the presentation. The ask is the same as it was before. Increased operating cost is a big piece. I'll go through that in a little bit more detail, and a competitive salary package for our staff here at Indian River School District. As we've said previously, and if you've looked at any of our literature, the normal referendum cycle is anywhere from, depending on the school district in your area, anywhere from around 3 to 5 years. Sometimes it's stretched to 6. Typically in Indian River, it's around that 5-year mark. We have not had a successful current expense referendum since 2017. So it has been quite a stretch since we were out asking the public for consideration for this increase. Why the increase? So over the last several years, you can see on average here on this slide, 7.4% annual increase, and our local revenues have only increased by about 3.5%. And Tammy's going to talk a little bit about that, of how that is generated in a moment. We all know that there's growth in our area, and we feel like, hey, with the growth in our area, the new property owners, shouldn't that revenue go up at a higher rate? It has not. It is maintained around 3.5%. And when you compare that to the 7.4%, we just can't sustain the operating level that we want under those conditions. We've listed here just a few of the major drivers of that escalation. Utility costs certainly are a big one. Transportation costs, there's substitute costs associated with our state as well that we're required to handle, and we want to. Mental health services have increased over the last few years. Homebound instructors and charter and choice payments are just a few of the big drivers of that escalation. The district's annual budget deficit since fiscal year 2023 have ranged from 4.2 million to 7.3 million. And again, as I said, without the passage of a referendum, further shortfalls will occur, and we will continue to be in this cycle. So referendum is the only process that allows us to get that revenue that puts us out of that deficit spending period. I think this graphic tells an important story for our community And we wanted to do a comparison from that 2017 time period when we passed that last referendum to 2024 and the increase over that period of time. I know many of you are feeling this same increase in your own homes, and the district is no different than that. So you can see 72% increase with substitutes, 147% homebound, charter and choice payments, 458% increase, utility cost, 30%, transportation, 176, mental health services. Back in 2017, there was not mandates for some of these services. So that has increased, as you can see there, since the passage of the 2017 referendum, 1,800,000. And you can see an overall escalation by percentage. Finance committee that meets monthly, and we were saying through those discussions, Tammy Smith was saying, hey, we are beginning the deficit spending process. It's a normal process, but we need to start to look into the future. Within the next couple of years, we will need to go to a referendum. So we continue to monitor, we continue to be as fiscally responsible as we could, and now we are at the point where the referendum is absolutely needed. And that is the purpose of this referendum and the package that's been presented. After the passage, we build back up that surplus. We get to a point where we're comfortable and we hang on as long as we can. We continue to maintain fiscal stewardship. We watch wasteful spending, et cetera, and we hopefully stretch this as long as possible. I can tell you that through this process, I've heard everything from, hey, stretch this out as long as you can. We don't want to see you again for another referendum for several years, to, hey, come back every year, every couple years, have a smaller package. We know you will be coming, and let us consider that so it's not a big jump. So I know in conversations with our board is interested in that, a strategic plan. It may not be every year, it may not be every 2 years, maybe it's every 4 or 5 years, and we tell our public, hey, if we can pass this in 2030, that's our eyes on that for the next referendum. It will be a lower percentage, hopefully, at that time, but there's unknowns, and Tammy will talk a little bit about that when she gets in front of you. The unknowns are those escalating costs that we talked about. What is the rate of that escalation? Does it level out? What happens with education reform that is being discussed in our state now? So there's many variables that occur through that process, but our hope is through this passage, we can certainly stretch it out for many years to come. So I talked about that competitive salary package, which is good, and also the environment here at Indian River School District. We've been able to hire all of our staff, 100% of our staff, which is amazing. That's not occurring across the entire state. There are districts in the state that have real concerns with filling positions. And when you talk about specialty positions like special education teachers, foreign language teachers, math, science specialists, those positions, you want to have that expert in front of your students because those teachers really matter. And we are lucky at Indian River, we've been able to fill those positions, and we want to be able to continue to do that. You'll see a little bit more here. We have already enacted some reductions over the last couple months, about 10% at each of our schools, reductions in staff, and about 19% at our district office. That's an uncomfortable process, and we know that impacts our schools, it impacts our community, but it's something we needed to do in order to try to get to a point where we felt comfortable going into next year, passage of a referendum or not, being able to hold on and be as fiscally responsible as we can. So I talked about that 19%. We've looked at our discretionary budgets. Those are being reduced by about 10% for next year. Extra pay for extra responsibility scales and non-athletic positions, those have also been reduced. We've adjusted our hourly pay rates for homebound tutoring and other services. So those rates have been adjusted accordingly, and we're reevaluating our after-school transportation services. We've reduced staff positions, as I said, on average about 10%. That's temporary and regular positions for a total of about 77 positions governed by our teacher collective bargaining agreement and 55 paraprofessional positions. A little bit more from these slides. What are we doing? We've looked at consolidation of positions. So how can we level that workload over a few different areas? We've redirected some of our workforce through the attrition process. We have 28 buses in our district that the district owns and operates out of the 166 total buses. So we are using those to try to increase some in-house bus services to, again, as a cost savings measure. We've partnered with Cyberlic Train on an energy efficiency program that's been in the works for several years. That is a rebate system that we hope to, we've looked at all of our energy systems across the board, and we know that as we operate as efficiently as possible, our expenditures will go down. So that is a continual process. The E-rate system is a system offered by the state for technology purposes. We've had a major cost savings with looking at the many technology purchases that are needed across our large district. 15 schools, 365 square miles, a lot of operation here, and that helps out. And we're looking for less expensive alternatives to some of the technology that is in use within our district now. Okay, at this time, we're going to talk a little bit about our tax rates. And before Tammy takes the mic, I think it's important to know, historically, Indian River School District has been the lowest tax rate in the county. We remain the lowest right now. If we were to pass the referendum, we move up about midway within the county in terms of tax rates. But our board has been clear. We want to keep taxes as low as we can, and we have maintained a low tax rate. And that was a real consideration here with this package. Mrs. Smith.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here, both in person and online. So these are our local tax rates. So love it or hate it, the way the system works in Delaware is that we receive funding through state, local, and federal resources. The local funding, the vast majority of it comes through the local tax rates that are set every year by the board, are sent to the county and come through on your annual property tax bills that come out in August. So currently, our district collects 4 of these tax rates. There's current expense, which is used for our operational costs, so our local share of salaries, utility bills, supplies and materials, athletic supplies, transportation, legal bills. It runs the gamut of what those are used for. Debt service is our rate when we go out for a major capital improvement referendum and we ask the taxpayers if we can borrow funds for that for 20-year bonds. That's our principal and interest payments every year. Tuition is a rate set by the board every year, and those are funds that are specifically set aside for special education students and pre-K students and tuition programs approved by the state. So for example, our Indian River School District students that we send to Howard T. Ennis, or students in our district that we send to the Sussex Consortium or to Delaware School for the Deaf or any of the other schools that are in those programs. And then minor cap is a match tax rate. That is the only match tax that the board currently collects. Their philosophy has always been that they would like the taxpayers to approve the rates and not them adding additional match taxes. Minor cap is used for repairs and maintenance on our buildings and grounds. So that's a 60-40 split with the state. The state gives us their 60% of funding and we're required to match the 40%. So for this referendum, the difference is we now have the new assessed values from the county. We did not have that when we went to referendum last time. They were available February 15th. All of our legal notices and ads and information had to be prepared for that referendum prior to that. So there was a lot of confusion with the old tax rates and the new assessed values and people applying those old rates to the new values. Because of the new values and the way the law works and revenues being neutral, in a year of reassessment, we have to calculate these rates down. So this shows what those rates look like, this year's current rates look like with the new assessed values. So current expense, that is what this referendum is for, becomes 11.45 cents prior to the referendum with a total rate of 15.76 cents. The overall tax impact of this referendum, we're looking to generate $22.5 million for the salary package and the operating expenses, as Dr. Owens went through in detail. That referendum increase rate that we're looking at is 5.59 cents per $100 of assessed value. That works out to be, with our new average value of about $481,000 at $269 per year, or $22.40 per month, $5.17 per week, or 74 cents per day. Now, because the reassessment adds an extra layer of complexity into this process, what I'm encouraging all taxpayers to do is to go onto our website and check out our referendum calculator. It will give you your estimated range of your new assessed values on your tax bill, which encompasses our districts, Sussex Tech and Sussex County. Those are the 3 rates on the tax bill. The increase for the referendum and the total of what that range will be. However, what's really important is that you compare that rate to the taxes you actually paid last year. Because with reassessment, everyone's property values went up, but at different rates. So with the data that I have, we've seen the vast majority of taxpayers where their tax rates, their actual taxes paid will go down even if the referendum passes. And I know that sounds strange because typically when do taxes go down? But what reassessment did, because the property values were 50 years old, is it redistributed those values. So commercial properties that weren't paying, that were underassessed, are now assessed higher, and other larger properties. So while it is $269 by the math, again, please check the new total based on the calculator on our website to what you actually paid last year. So impact fees was a topic that came up a lot during our last referendum. We got a lot of questions about it. So there are 2 different processes. In Newcastle County is the voluntary school assessment, which is where developers would give a flat rate to the district per every home in a major subdivision that is not low income or over 55. And in Kent County, they have impact fees that are applied to most building permits. There's a threshold. We, as a district, both myself and Dr. Owens individually and our school board have lobbied individually and collectively, have lobbied the county council to explore this. What is good to know is as of yesterday, the council voted 4-1 to move forward with an impact fee. They're going to work with their local legislators to develop legislation that will authorize them to collect that, but they're going to go through the process and exploring what the percentage looks like. They talked about a minimum value of a building permit so that someone that's adding a fence or a deck won't have that impact fee, but if it's a new home, they would. So that is breaking news as of yesterday, but we're very encouraged by that. The one caveat to that is, however, these types of fees can only be used for our construction costs. So the local share of a building project, it can apply to that. So it would lower the tax rate that we would apply for that project, but we cannot use these funds for operating. So we can't use them for utilities. We can't use them for local share of salaries. It has to be for that school construction because they're meant to provide relief for additional growth in our schools. Sussex County's website is here for reassessment if you have any questions that have yet to be answered. That gives all the information on the reassessment process and including the calculator for the estimated cost that we piggybacked off of for our website. Reassessment and revenue neutrality. So I alluded to this earlier, but when reassessment happens, and of course, it's a new topic for everybody because it's been 50 years since it happened. By law, the reassessment has to be revenue neutral to the school districts. So what that means is whatever current expense revenues we collect this year, we have to collect the same amount next year. So we will calculate those tax rates to collect that same amount. What's unfortunate in that process for districts like ours is we've been growing about 3% every year. So instead of getting that additional revenue for that growth, we will stay neutral. So as I talked about earlier, when we calculate those old rates, the $3.23, which was the overall tax rate, it becomes 15.76 cents with those new values. And then with the 5.59 cents of referendum increase, it would become 21.35 cents. There is a portion in state law that allows for school boards to collect 10% more in that year of reassessment. And what that's meant to do is to make up for delinquencies and that growth I mentioned that we would miss out on, but also appeals. The appeals process, while the window has ended to file new appeals, they're still going through the process and gathering the data and making changes to those assessed values on a daily basis. However, there were concerns last time from the taxpayers that if the referendum passed, the board would vote on the 10% and just stick an additional dollar value on the taxpayers. So in March, our school board voted to say we will not collect, or no, I'm sorry, was it February or March? They voted to say we will not do 10% if the referendum passes, just to alleviate those fears. So again, to demonstrate what I mean when I talk about being revenue neutral, our assessed values in our district prior to the new reassessment were about $2 billion at those 1974 values. They increased to just over $40 billion at the new value, so 20 times increase. So then you can see what we did to calculate those rates from the 1974 values to the 2023 values to collect the same amount of revenue, but that's what the rates become. So again, we're not applying the old rates to the new assessed values. The referendum increase calculator I mentioned is here. You can find it on our referendum page, or there's a QR code as well. You can go in, put your new assessed value. You should have received that in a letter from Tyler Technologies. However, if you did not, we have a link on the website where you can go to the Sussex County website, look up your property by name, I believe address or tax parcel ID. It'll give you your new assessed value. Once you calculate it, there's also a link to pull up your tax bill from last year in case you don't have that handy or it goes to your mortgage company and you never see it. And then you can see what you actually paid in taxes. And then Sussex County's website also has a wealth of information about tax assistance programs for senior citizens, disabled residents, veterans, and low-income families. The two I am most familiar about is a disabled veterans tax credit. There's certain criteria you have to meet for that, but you can apply for that through the county, and that's a state program. And there's a senior citizens tax credit. So I don't know how well known this is. However, if you're over 65, you've been domiciled in Delaware for at least 10 years, you're eligible for a tax credit of 50% of your taxes, your school taxes, up to $500. All you have to do is fill out the application that's available on the website, send it into the county with a copy of your driver's license, and they apply that tax credit every year. What is great about those programs is the state actually funds those back to us, so we don't lose revenue. The state does a calculation at the end of the year and funds that for us. Back to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Okay, so what happens if the referendum does not pass? Again, I talked about the operating expenses that continue to occur. So those operating expenses we anticipate, as they have over the last several years, will continue to outpace the district's revenue streams. And that, again, creates further concerns for us as we move forward from school year to school year. We have been considering programmatic cuts for some time. However, we do not want to get into a situation where we have to look at academic, extracurricular, or athletic programs. Our hope is we are successful with this referendum and that discussion goes away for the foreseeable future. However, if it's not successful, we're going to have to project into the future as we go into next year. We hope to be able to be well into next year before we have to make some of those decisions, but they are all going to be on the table. We may not be able to fill some of those additional instructional positions to which we're entitled. Through our unit count process, the district allows us a number of units, which are teaching units, staffing units, and we're entitled to those, and we want to be able to utilize everything we're entitled to. However, there's a local cost to those. Those will need to be considered as well. Obviously, student services, when you're looking at reductions in anything, student services are impacted in a negative way. We talked about that competitive salary package. We would need to look at a different package potentially or hold on any kind of any salary package for our staff if the referendum doesn't pass. We would have to go back to the table there with our teachers union and consider something else, which again, the competitive salary package is what is needed and what's deserved. The final bullet, again, I come back to we as a district have been able to staff our classrooms 100% over the last couple of years, even in the midst of a national teacher shortage. To do that, I think tells a story of Indian River being a good place to work and a place where people want to be and want to educate students. We want to keep it that way. I think this slide tells a very important story. One that not everyone is aware of, especially if you don't have kids in our schools or kids involved in some of these programs. This is just a few. I wanted to provide a snapshot of what we offer every day, every year within our school district. 24 advanced placement course offerings. Those are at our 2 high schools. 24 career and tech pathways. Those are our pathways to prepare students for life beyond school, whether it's nursing, our most recent is culinary, business. We have an ROTC pathway, teaching pathway, many pathways that we feel meet the diverse needs of our students. Again, 24 of those offered within our high schools. Dual enrollment courses through partnerships with our higher education agencies. We have Spanish immersion programs at both of our high schools, 2 of our middle schools, and 3 of our elementary schools. We have an IB, International Baccalaureate program at Sussex Central High School, 5th grade Excel programs at all of our elementary schools, 45 high school athletics, 43 middle school athletic programs, and these are just a few of our extracurriculars. Band and chorus, extremely popular. Drama, theater, dance, robotics, Girls on the Run, Let Them Run, Mock trial team. Again, I am just tipping the iceberg here of what is offered every day within our schools. These programs are what make our school district great. These are not offered everywhere. The diversity of programs aren't offered everywhere. We don't want to have to peak at any of these and any kind of reductions because these are needed for our students. Our kids enjoy this. It prepares them for life beyond high school. And I think it's important to take a really close look at all the great things that are happening in our district that we don't want to have impacted adversely. And I think I've embedded this throughout. Strong schools mean strong communities. We have a very close-knit community. We stretch from Selbyville over to Bethany, through Millsboro, Gumboro, Georgetown, over to Long Neck, close-knit communities. And our schools, I really do believe, are the nucleus of those communities. And our parents and our community are in and out of our schools. Whether they have students in our schools or not, we offer lots of programs in our schools that bring our community in. And we go out into our community to offer services as well. Just recently this morning, I was in an awards assembly at Sussex Central High School where two JROTC students were honored for the magnitude of service hours that they had provided over the course of the year. So, something important to share. I'll go back. We know that our students are in our healthcare facilities. There are in our businesses, they're in our restaurants, there are service workers, there are future police officers. Again, our school district, it's incumbent upon us to prepare them for that, and they remain here. They are serving us in our community. Successful schools and gifted educators help create a vibrant community that epitomizes the meaning of We Are IRSD. And we stand behind that with everything that we do. That's why we're standing in front of you today and hope to get your support on June 5th. I think I may have missed a slide here, so I'm going to go back. Going along with what we had shared, but this is up to the day almost. 22.6 million in college scholarships offered to our high school seniors. 923 college acceptances. Several students have been accepted to Ivy League schools, our HBCUs. We have students spanning from locally right here, Del Tech, Del State, University of Delaware, all the way to Argentina. Our 2- and 4-year college plans to attend those colleges. Indian River High School, 76% of students, 60% at Sussex Central, 12 to the workforce, 12 to the trade, and 4 to military. And we know it's our job to prepare for each of those levels. Not everyone is going to college. We understand that. So we have to prepare for the workforce. I talked about those CTEs and getting those job opportunities and diverse occupations from our school district. Our counseling teams work really hard to prepare students once they leave our schools. Okay, again, June 5th is the day, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Here are our polling sites: East Millsboro, Georgetown Elementary, Indian River High School. We are no longer at Long Neck Elementary. We are at Long Neck Methodist Church. That's for accessibility purposes. We want to make sure, and the Department of Elections, who makes the decisions on ultimately where our polling places are, but we want to make sure folks are comfortable coming in and out. Our schools are busy places, and sometimes our parking lots get crowded, especially during the school day. So Long Neck moved over to the church. Lord Baltimore remains. Millville Community Center is a new polling location, as it was last time. Selbyville Fire Hall, again, Selbyville Middle School. It's a tough place to get in and out of, especially when things are happening at the school. So they have moved over to the Selbyville Fire Hall. And finally, Sussex Central High School. Eligibility. So again, it's district residents who are U.S. citizens 18 years or older are eligible to vote in the referendum. Voter registration is not required, but residents must provide that proof of residency. You do not have to own your home to be eligible to vote. Again, you must be in the district. It must be your primary residence, and you may vote at any of those 8 locations that I shared. So wherever you are in the district on that particular day, you do not have to vote in the polling place where you live. Absentee ballots are available until noon, Friday, May 30th. So again, apply for that. If you need an absentee ballot, and the Department of Elections information is there on our screen, the phone number and website. This is what the ballot will look like. And again, as Mrs. Smith indicated, we're happy that we were able to update this with the most recent rates and assess for the reassessed property value. Okay, and then finally, again, remember, this referendum is for our children, our schools, and our future. And we hope that you will inform yourself through attendance at venues like this. Also, we have updated our website. We'll continue to update our website daily with the flyers. We do have flyers here for those in attendance today, postcards. This presentation is available on our website. Everything is available in Spanish, and there is a hotline. So if there's information that you need that you haven't received, you can't find on our website, we haven't answered here, certainly can give us a call, send us an email, and we're happy to answer all questions. Did I miss anything, Mrs. Smith? I think so. All right, if you have questions, I do ask you to come to the podium so we can capture it through our live stream there. And I know our team in the back has been collecting questions, so we'll go through those. But is there anyone in the audience here in person that would like to either make a comment or has a question? Yes. Do you mind coming to the podium? Thank you.
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Cheryl Roach. I do support the referendum. Today on the news, WBOC, they actually made the comment that it was going to be the figure of the $279 per person. And I don't really think is that the way it is? It's really more per property, right? I'm just trying to clarify that in case it is something that could be a problem for you.
Correct. Thank you. We appreciate that. I'm trying to find the slide. Yes, it's $269 to the average property. Absolutely. It's not by individual taxpayer.
Yeah, well, I thought you would want to know that I saw that today on the news that it was per person. So
Yes, thank you so much.
you're quite welcome because I wanted it right too. So
Right. Thank you.
Well, that's misleading.
When we say taxpayer there, and we can clarify that or change that wording, we say taxpayer for taxpayer property, but no, we understand that, the semantics of that. So we can clarify that.
Yeah, we'll certainly update that. And thank you for bringing that up.
I thought you'd want to.
Yes.
We need it.
Sure.
I just have a question about a clarification. I'm looking at one of your flyers, and I want to know what is included in curriculum and instructional budgets, because I'm looking at that and vast difference in the budget amounts between that and athletic budgets. So I'm wondering what's included in it.
So our curriculum and instruction budgets encompass budgets for our Department of Instruction, where they buy supplies for the schools across the board. Budgets also for our IB program and dual enrollment, but that doesn't encompass all of the instructional dollars. So on our discretionary budget, there's also vocational education budgets that go to those career and tech programs, but there's also school budgets and there's federal funds that flow through the school.
Okay, you've just confused me.
I'm sorry.
This is basically supplies. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. At the district level, that gets sent down to the schools. Yes. So we do have some district spending that happens, and then we provide those supplies to the schools, but the schools also have their own budgets to buy their own supplies as well.
And that's why it's so low?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
When I followed the guideline, the place you had about tuition, and maybe I didn't interpret this correctly, but that money's used to go to pay for special needs students. Forgive me if that's not the correct.
No, you're
word,
correct.
to go to another school that's in the district?
Yeah, so
Like they go to the consortium, so you're paying the consortium the tuition for that student to go?
yes, so the name tuition is odd, right? Because to me, it sounds like students are paying to come here, but that's what the state calls it, unfortunately. But yes, that's for special needs kids. So we, by law, are required to educate the students that live in our district. They are residents of our district. So if they have a special need that we can't service, so for example, at the Sussex Consortium, they handle autism.
Right.
If they have additional needs that we cannot provide in this district, then they will go to schools like that. Much like in our district, we have Howard T. Ennis, which is a countywide school, and students come there from Del Mar and Laurel and Woodbridge and Cape. And so those local dollars have to go with the student to pay for that education.
And how much is that?
The tuition budget
Yeah.
off the top, I'm not sure that I know it off the top of my head, but it's several $1 million a year for these programs. And the funds also in that budget go to educate our own special needs students as well that are here in the district.
Is it being looked at by, I'm sure it's got to be looked at by the board.
Yes.
That program be provided in-house at a cheaper rate than doing this?
For example, when we send the students to the consortium or somewhere else?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a process.
And is non-public included in that too? Where I would assume you're going out of the state?
The only time a student would go out of state is if they're in a residential facility. And we're required to pay for that as well. It goes through a process with the State Department of Education where they approve that.
Yes.
But yes, so for when we send students to the consortium, for example, or even to Howard T. Ennis, right, within our district, our special education teams go through, there's a IEP process and meetings and everything that's had to make that approval to ensure that the student's needs are being met.
Okay. Can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
This has to do with transportation. I heard you mention you have 28 in-house buses. Is that cost effective based on the 166, based on what you're paying the contractor? And are those bus replacements? I know a bus replacement's a very expensive item. Is that something that your transportation people have decided?
Right. Well, it's really out of necessity because we've needed additional buses and routes, and our contractual services, although they do a nice job and they've worked with us for many years.
Right. Over
the last few years, it's been the need of the district to look for the purchase of our own. And I'll let Mrs. Smith talk about the efficiency of each method, but it is a major cost to the district.
I know it is.
And there is some benefits with using our own buses, but we're in the education business, not necessarily the transportation
No, but
business.
that's a big chunk of your budget.
Very,
I can tell you that.
It is very much so.
Yeah.
And, with that, not only are we transporting students, but, the maintenance of those buses and
I know.
over a period of time. So I'll let Tammy talk a little. Yeah, exactly.
For that too, I understand that.
Yes, so several years ago, I want to say maybe around 10 years ago, transportation was 100% paid for by the state. However, they pushed that down to the district. So they pay 90%, we have to pay 10%. And that 10% comes out of these local dollars. So with that, their contracts are based off of calculations the Department of Education does and fuel allowances and mileage rates and all of that. So when we pay a contractor, we have that contract rate and we pay that 10%. With the bus routes that we have in-house, I did an analysis a year or two ago. it actually saves us money to have those routes in-house, because with the dollars that we get for them and the efficiencies that we have, we're basically funding that whole operation on that 90%. There's very little of that additional 10% that's coming out of local dollars. We're able to do that.
Is that including the driver's benefits?
Yep,
too?
it's the drivers
Still?
and their benefits. That's funded through the state, the fuel, the maintenance. Now, the state does cover the vast majority of the bus purchase because, to your point, they are very expensive. So the state does pay for almost all of those buses. However, I don't think as a district we necessarily want to be in the bus business completely, right? That's a huge operation with a lot of staff. But as Dr. Owens said, we've had to take them in-house as a necessity. But luckily, that's been actually very financially lucrative for us.
Okay. Are they looking at, I'm harping on this and I don't know
No,
why,
you're
but
fine.
I've seen
You're fine.
some buses that pull into some of the schools and they look like they got very few students on them. And I noticed they're not special need, which I would understand that could be a reduced population. But are they looking at like trying to combine or to be a little more efficient? Is the transportation department or whoever, I don't know how it works, looking at that?
Yes, they look at it individually, but also we have a busing program that helps us to be as efficient as possible. So that technology tells us where those students are living, what school they will be attending. And a big driver of it also is the time frame. We've had to go to a 3-tier bus system.
Right.
Early, some middle, and then our later bus, because some of our bus drivers many of our bus drivers do 2 and 3 runs in the morning and in the afternoon to, again, be as efficient as possible. But that's really based on we don't have enough buses. So they do look at that. Some of the routes are heavily attended and some of them aren't. And then it fluctuates when kids, move, parents start to drive them, kids start to drive themselves. So then it's reevaluated and recalculated. But I do understand your point that, having the buses as full as possible certainly maximizes our efforts as well.
And my last question with that transportation piece is, I know in the community where I live, for some reason, the boundary line between Indian River District and another school district, there's 500 and some odd homes in my development, and there are 12 of them that are in another school district, which requires 2 elementary buses to come in there, 2 middle school buses, and 2 high school buses. And it's like, well, if it's 12 houses, yeah, maybe that boundary's been there since 74, but why don't you make a shift to say because I'm calculating 185 school days times 3 buses times salary times fuel. Why are you sending 6 buses into a development that 3 should handle? Sorry, I'm harping on transportation.
Understood. And because we're so big, we have a boundary that touches several school districts on our east, west, and northern side. So we do hear that from time to time. Those are state level decisions that we really can't make.
State sets the boundary?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything online that we didn't cover through the presentation or we've not been able to respond to from our colleagues in the back that we need to address here this evening? I certainly appreciate all of you that were able to attend. I know everyone has a busy schedule. This is important. This is important to the Indian River School District. It's important to our communities, but primarily our students. We need to position ourselves as a school district where we can provide the best possible services, and this referendum helps. So we certainly appreciate your willingness to come, get information, ask great questions. Those of you that have joined online, we appreciate you listening in. Again, the referendum website is a wealth of knowledge, and it's not the only place. Again, you can call. We don't always answer, but you leave a message, we will call you back, or email, we will respond as well. Additionally, if there are organizations that you think we should be in front of sharing this information over the next several weeks, we're happy to come out to a community event, an HOA, wherever we can be in front of people to allow them to hear this information, to be informed. We want folks to come out on June 5th and vote based on the information that's before them. So again, I think, do we have one more question? I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. I will hang around as long as I need to. If you think of something and you're here this evening, happy to answer any questions. Thank you again. Good night.
Thank you.